Well, let's get started. Welcome to the jury training course of July 2024. This has been put together largely by the APF, and our brethren across the ditch from New Zealand Federation have been invited, and we welcome all contributions. So the jury training course of 2024, you'll see that I probably will use the abbreviation JTC 2024. So please understand that I'm not a typist and I don't like typing out the thing over and over again. And that's what I refer to. Now, everyone here has been invited by the APF because we feel that you're ready to become a national judge. So what does that mean? It means that you're already a national exhibitor. You've exhibited several times and you've received a VMA or larger in one of the classes that we judge. So we judge all FIP classes and the additional APF classes. So the jury training course has been put together by the APF. Now, all the presenters are volunteers, so I really appreciate if you could value the time and effort that they've put into it and for you to get the most out of this training course. Reasons for the APF to put the jury training course together. Well, one of the things we need to do is maintain a level of national judges in each state and in Australia. Unfortunately, our members have got a habit of dying on us, and we need to replenish the judging stock. And while that's a little bit lighthearted, it is a serious thing for us to constantly upgrade the national judges. It takes a process, and we'll go through the process, and it takes many years to develop good national judges. So we will do this on a regular basis, probably every 5 to 10 years. The other reason is we try to inspire people to develop new exhibits. And as a national judge, once you start judging and seeing other people's exhibits, it does give you that inkling that maybe I can do more than the 1 or 2 exhibits that I've got. So there's this sort of inspirational mode. Part of being on a jury is we're trying to develop future philatelic leaders. So people come into the philatelic community and they enjoy what we've got, and we need to develop leaders, and judges are one of those ways for us to develop leaders. Also, we ask the exhibitors to pay money to the organising committee, and we'd like them to get their money's worth. So by having constant judging training courses, putting fresh judges in, keeping everyone developing their skills, I think we do the right thing by the exhibitors and they do get their money's worth. Also, as time goes by, we're introducing new technologies. 30, 40 years ago, people used to handwrite all of their exhibits. Then the typewriter came out. Now people do word processing and a whole range of things. Well, even with the judges, we are now looking at researching on the net. We're also looking at doing written feedback via computer. So the actual exhibitor walks away with not only a medal and a certificate, but good information for them to improve their exhibit. So why would you want to become a national judge? Well, one of the things that I've found personally is you definitely improve your philatelic expertise and knowledge. What happens is you're locked away for 3-4 days with 20 or 30 philatelic people, all talking about stamps and everything related. And it really does, in a short period of time, lift your expertise and knowledge in the hobby. And that's the part that I think is quite fulfilling. We are part of a philatelic community, and I think people tend to be knife and forkers in a lot of organisations, and by becoming a judge, you're contributing to that philatelic community. There is a bit of personal fulfillment when someone says, thank you very much, that was good information, I really appreciate the effort you put in there. There's that bit of recognition that you get from judging. There's also networking opportunities, and never underlie, you may think you're the only person collecting what you collect, but once you meet up with judges and other exhibitors and they know what you collect and you know what they collect, there is opportunities to forge new relationships and develop more your philatelic knowledge, as well as in your collection and exhibits. There is a bit of travel and exposure, so getting out of your town and seeing the bigger picture. I'm often amazed. We're over in Taiwan last year, and the amount of people that we saw that came through the exhibition just opened your eyes that the hobby is not dead. When you're sitting alone in your own room, you probably think that that's what's happened, that the hobby is no longer there. But you get out in the wide world and you can see what's happening. My favourite is I'm become a national judge to become a better exhibitor, because if I can get into the minds of the judges, I can produce a better exhibit and become a better exhibitor. All right, so this is a bit of a flow chart for those people that need flow charts of what's happening. We say here there's state accreditation. Some states of Australia do have state shows, and people do get some experience at that state level. The National Medal Achievement starts the course of becoming a judge. So you need to get a VMA qualification in one of the areas. If you get large silver or more in a second or third class, then you'll also be able to judge in those areas too. New Zealand's a little bit different. They judge all classes, but in Australia, we judge the classes that we're qualified in. You're now doing the training course, and out of this training course, you'll qualify to do an apprenticeship at a national show. You do one apprenticeship, then the second time you become a probation judge. The difference between apprenticeship and a probational judge, the apprenticeship's at your cost and you have no voting rights in the jury. Probation judge has voting rights, and the organising committee pays for that judge to attend. There's a final assessment which will be done by your team leader, or the jury assessor, and they will say, yes, you've passed, and you can sign the National Register at the next show that you judge. If we're in doubt that you haven't quite got it, then we'll ask you to do another probation. We always give you an opportunity to prove yourself, and then you'll sign the National Judges Register. Once you've signed the register, you need to re-qualify every 3 years in the classes you wish to judge in. So you need to be entering exhibitions every 3 years, at least, if not every year, to keep developing your skills. You'll judge at national exhibitions, you'll judge at national exhibitions, and down the track, you'll have enough and you're getting too old and you think, I don't want to do this anymore, then you can become emeritus or a consultant. For those people that want to go further, then you can qualify to become an international apprentice, an international judge, an international team leader, and also chairman, etc., etc. So you can go. So there's actually quite a flow chart. Most of what we want to do in APF is get you to the national judging status, and in time goes on to become a team leader. All right, so the course is pretty much done in sessions. You've seen everything. So today is really an introduction, and Charles is going to give you the talk on judges' responsibility. Session 2, we're going to start talking about individual classes, traditional and aero. Session 3 will be postal stationery and thematics. 4 will be picture postcards and maximaphily. Session 5 will be postal history and astro. We'll do revenues and youth on the 6th session. We'll start to do a bit on written feedback on the 7th, and then we'll talk about literature and forgery and one-framers. Session 8, we'll then talk about open exhibits and all the non-FIP classes like polar, first aid covers, frugal, etc. On our last session, we're going to do the jury procedure, walk you through from the time you've been asked to judge to the time that you go home from the jury, that whole procedure. And then finally, Bernie's going to talk a bit about the confidentiality in the jury. What we aim to do is to run some face-to-face sessions. The first one will start in Canberra. So if you're attending Canberra and you can be there on Monday, the 9th of September, then you can start in the first session. We will run a second one in the Sydney exhibition next year. I haven't spoken to the NZPF, but I will be at Royal Pecs, and I'm happy to take anyone through any of the frames and do that same practice live while we're at the show. So really the face-to-face one-day session is going to be solid judging practice. You'll be put in teams of 3, and you'll be judging just like you're in a jury. We'll spend an hour reviewing all the results, and then we'll do more judging practice, and then review and wrap up. So at the end of the face-to-face, I'll feel confident that you'll be able to go into a jury as a apprentice and know what's going on and get straight into being part of the team. As far as Zoom details, so before Monday, I will email a link that you've done just like to get into here. I'm hoping that within 48 hours of this session, the recorded YouTube will be put onto the APF website, and we'll send a link to that. The presenter's material, whether it be PowerPoint presentation or notes, will be emailed to everyone after the talk. We do have a website on APF that lists all the classes and where you can download the information on each of those classes. And we'll have, that's the YouTube. So these links are actually live. So when you get the presentation, you can follow those. So this is what the APF website looks like, the APF org with classes. You'll see the first one's traditional, and there's a download, the FIP regulation. Then if you want to do postal history, you can download the guidelines. So this is where you can download each, and I recommend that you do this before each of the sessions and read the guidelines so you've got some idea on what to expect. This is the APF YouTube channel. As you can see, we've already put up our team leaders training that we've done. You're more than welcome to watch any of those and just get an idea on what a team leader does. It's not a mandatory requirement, but it's a resource that's worth looking at. So the assignment. So it's due after all these sessions. I don't want anyone to be afraid. I want you to just knuckle down and do it. There's not always one correct answer. There's many answers. And basically, when I assess the assignments, it'll be pass or fail. It won't be you'll get 99 or 98 and you can compare to everyone. The main aim of the assignment is for us to understand that you understand each of the classes. And so it's pretty much that's all. So questions, if you've got questions, you can put in the chat box. I'm just going to have a quick look if anyone's put a question in the chat box. Not yet, so that's good. And you can do that anytime during the presentation. We will look at that. Most presenters will pause and ask for any questions when they get to various sessions. And at that time, you can use your mic. So I'm going to ask, is there any questions? So to answer, you need to unmute yourself and ask the question. I'll take that as a no. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to hand over to Charles Bromser. He's a highly decorated judge. He's an international judge. He's also on the Astro Commissioner's chair. He's got a lot of experience and he's going to go through judges' responsibility. So give me a chance to work out how to stop sharing. And all right, I'm going to ask Charles if he can share his now. Okay. All right, Charles, are you able to share your presentation?
Go and share, but it says someone else is sharing.
Okay, I thought I'd switch. This is the tricky bit.
It says someone else, Claire.
I'm just...
Unshare, Glenn.
I've got, it says...
We did the small...
It says share.
It says someone else is sharing.
Yeah, so it says that
you're
I'm
not
still
allowing
sharing.
multiples.
If are you able to share now?
Again? No, it says you haven't allowed multiple sharing, Glenn.
So here I've got share screens to all participants. So you try that. No, this is,
Still thinks you're sharing.
yep. I can't work out how to switch off sharing because I've switched it off here. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try now.
No,
All right.
I can still see your screen, Glenn.
Yeah.
I can still see jury training course. Close your PowerPoint.
Okay. So I just got to minimize here, close my PowerPoint and stop. Okay.
So we
Try
can
that.
see every.
Now we're okay.
Now I can share.
Okay. Thank you for that, Charles.
That's okay.
We need to.
Cool. So now you should be able to see the role of the judge. Okay, so we'll start. So this is a qualifying seminar for people who want to become judges. And our first task will be to go and see the purpose of the seminar is to ensure that the judges stay fair, accurate, and are consistent in their judging so that we all have the same sort of background in terms of our training for the role of the judge. And we need to develop competencies that you need as a judge. What we'll be looking at tonight is ongoing requirements, self-education, which you must do at home, preparation before the exhibition, and of course, participation in the exhibition and what you're going to do in judging, some of the common issues, how juries deliberate, how to produce good feedback in terms of both written feedback and in front of the frame. Because for a lot of people, the only feedback they will get is the written feedback that they receive with their exhibits at the end of the exhibition. The ongoing requirement is if the APF international officer asks you to judge, it's best to say, yes, please. Because one of the things is, of course, in Australia, we have many judges, and typically on a jury, you might have one or two people in your class, and the rest of the time you need to wait for the next exhibition. Behaviour at the exhibition, you always need to be punctual, complete your task, and very importantly, give feedback and be there for the feedback sessions. Remember, the jury work is confidential. What is said in the jury stays in the jury. It's best not to talk about your jury work with others other than jury members at the time, not only during the exhibition, but also after the exhibition. Now, you need to stay qualified in Australia, and I've got every 4 years, but Glenn's just told me it's 3 years. So every 3 years you need to exhibit, and you need to at least get 70 points in the class that you've qualified in, and the other classes you can have light silver. To stay active is very important. Try to do as many classes as you can and different formats. So you might have an 8-framer, try to do a 1-framer in that class. Extend your exhibition work wherever you can. Make sure you go to exhibitions. We don't have many of them in Australia, but there are at least one every year, and there'll be one framer somewhere in Australia. Try to get to that. Even better still, if you can get overseas, you'll get a feel of what Philatelic is doing at the international level, especially if you aspire to become an international judge. Go to judges' seminars, go to workshops. Always try to go to classes that you've never been to so that you get a full background on what is happening in Philatelic. And when you've done your jury duty, make sure that you tell the international officer. They can't keep track of everything, so you need to tell them what you've been judging and what your exhibiting activities have been for that year. It's always a continual self-education. Some of the most important work that you'll do is when you're not at the exhibition. You need to stay knowledgeable in Philatelic, seeing that it's always changing. You need a knowledge of all aspects and a deep knowledge of your area. When you're with an exhibitor, they do expect you to know something about the class that you're exhibiting, that you're judging in. Therefore, you need to stay up to date with the judging through self-education in philately. Read and study widely. Best to subscribe to some important journals. The London Philatelists, P from A in Australia. Every class has its own journal, probably, so it's best that you get hold of those. And as we're trying to do, collect across different classes so that you get a varied experience in those classes as well. Because you'll find that it's very different in postal stationery than it is in thematics. Attend as many exhibitions as you can, and when you're at the exhibition, study all the exhibits. Don't just go to the class that you like. Make sure you go to seminars, and what we do expect is that you're fully conversant with the grevs and the guidelines of the class that you're going to judge in. And because the guidelines are very fluid, you need to regularly update on those. You can either go to the APF website to find them there, or you can go to the FIP website and catch them there as well. Australia has some classes that are not at FIP level, and you need to go to those if you're asked to do things like frugal or polar. That's where we keep those rules. And the one thing is that you have to follow those rules because they're the basis of your judging. When you've got your exhibits, try to improve them all the time. You will get feedback, develop new classes, develop other exhibits. The idea is not to win medals, but to get a feeling and an empathy for the different classes and how difficult it is to actually do, say, a thematic or an astro exhibit. For the exhibition committee will send you the title pages, sometimes the synopsis, and that's where your work starts for that exhibition. Make sure that you look them over, that you read them carefully, because remember, you will need to be leading discussions on that topic, on that exhibit, and in the end, you'll be doing the feedback, both written and in front of frames. So you need to get a good feeling of what that exhibit is going to be about. Be well prepared, especially the ones that you've been allocated by your team leader, because the team leader will say you need to do the feedback sessions for, say, half a dozen of those exhibits if it's a large class. If you've helped the exhibitor prepare those exhibits, you need to tell the team leader so that you can recuse yourself from the judging, because it's best that people know that you've had some input into someone's exhibit. Study the references. Most title pages have a bibliography or references at the bottom. Hopefully they're more useful than Wikipedia, so that you can get some insight into areas that you've never studied before. The title page and the synopsis are your starting point about things like rarity, what is in the plan, does it make sense when you're following the plan, is it logical? All that will come from that title page that you get before the exhibition. You need to have a basic understanding of the subject matter and evaluate it and find out its philatelic significance. We don't expect you to be an expert in all subjects, but you do need to have done some background studies on the exhibits that you're going to cover. Study the title and the synopsis page. Always get the background information and get some feeling about the material that you're going to see. How difficult is it really to get a cover on that area? Because you need to be effective and do some background work, which you mainly will find in philatelic libraries. Therefore, it's best to be a member of a philatelic group that has a good library. And of course, you're lucky nowadays that you can go to the internet and find out about most topics. And remember, judging is a logical process. when you look at an exhibition at an exhibits page, make sure you know what the purpose is, what the scope is. Sometimes the scope is too large, and you might think, how are you going to fit that into 5 frames or even into 1 frame? So always look at the scope of the topic. And of course, what's the material going to be like? Is it European material, where it's from Germany, it'll be in excellent condition? Or is it from Asia, from India, for example, where you expect tropical problems to be with the material? And then try to find out what the highlights are. Do they have rare material? If they note it, how do they note it? Some exhibitors put little stars on their important items, or put a different coloured matting or a different coloured background or outline around their important items. So you need to note that if you can. And what would you expect to see for a large gold? What would you expect to see for gold? Because you will be surprised that sometimes they're very good exhibits. So then you need to be able to distinguish between what is rare and, sadly, what is expensive. Because just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's rare. Often the two things get confused in the judging. And of course, what references do you need? Typically, you need a good reference library yourself. And what we can find at the APF is that there are people who could help you with certain topics. And if you contact your team leader, they may be able to tell you who to contact. A good source, of course, in Australia is David Collier. He's always happy to help. But sadly, the Philatelic library is still in mothballs at the moment. But usually he's very good at helping you do your research. The question session. So I'll unmute you. You can unmute yourself, or Glenn might have some questions already.
There is a question from Charles, to Charles, that's you, Charles.
Yep.
About, you mentioned journals. What was the journal mentioned? I think it was P for A you mentioned.
From in Australia. It's very important if you're doing Australian philately. Another good one is, of course, the American Exhibitor Journal. Of course, the London Philatelist, if you're doing very classical material. Most subjects have their own journals. So in astrophilately, there's an astro journal. The APF has its own journal that sometimes will have sections on how to judge. So there are a number of journals available to judges.
Yeah, and I think even in New Zealand, Chris, I get the New Zealand Airmail journal. So there, and you've got the Royal of New Zealand has its own journal. So there's
New
a
Zealand
lot of
has
other
what's called the Forum for judges.
Yeah.
So they've got their own judges journal. That is very good.
Yeah. So any other questions before Charles moves on?
Yes.
Charles has just got audio problems at the moment. I've told him to turn his audio on and off.
Success.
That's it. Now you can talk.
Yeah.
Shit. Try again. Turn it on and off. Audio on and off.
So audio.
There we go.
See an audio on there? Yeah. What?
Yeah, we're hearing you fine now, Charles.
to have a drop in. So in Australia, we do expect you to bring a laptop to the exhibition as a judge, because that's what you're going to put your feedback on. So you must bring your computer, preferably with Word, so that you can do the work in the jury. Before the exhibition, usually you'll get a timetable that tells you when there's a roll call, when the jury meetings are on, when you have the photograph, or when you're going to put your results in, and when the feedback sessions are on. So there's always a timetable that you need to follow. And the first day of the jury, you need to get there early if you can. Typically, we have at our exhibitions that the judges are very useful at the beginning because they have to help put up frames in terms of not putting up the frame, but putting material into the frames. So they already get some feeling about the type of material that they will be seeing. Make sure you're there on time for your jury function. The one thing that really upsets the jury is having to wait for colleagues to get there. Stay there until you're released by the jury chair. Make sure you go to social events when the jury is invited to them. The important things is they expect you to be at the opening, at Palmaris's. Sometimes you'll find that an exhibition in Malaysia would like you to be there, so they have a night that they invite you to. So make sure that you set a time for those. Tell the family and your friends that you don't have time for chit-chats while you're there. And really important is to stay away from the dealers. It really upsets a jury secretary when they're walking about and they see you huddled over a box at the jury when you really should be on duty. Remember, it's a day's job and often you're working well into the night. So you need to prepare for that, because when you're doing the written feedback sessions, they really need to be done quite well. So it takes time. One of the things that you can do while you're having some lead time is to look at all the exhibits when you're there, as opposed to just the class that you're going to judge in, so that you get a good feel of what is happening in the exhibition. Go to the first jury meeting early so that you can introduce yourself to the team, so that you pick up paperwork, the people know where you are. Have your badge on so that people know that you're a juror. It makes it much easier when you're asking people to move away from the frames, and dress appropriately for that exhibition. Obviously in Queensland, it's going to be hot, so you need cool clothing. And the important thing is the shoes that you wear. Most of the time you're on concrete, and the long periods on concrete is tough on the old feet. So have comfortable shoes when you're there. And remember, on the photographs, you do need to be properly attired. Nowadays, we don't need you to be there with a tie, but you do need to be neatly dressed for that occasion, because there are photos. We do expect you to be a team player as a judge. You're there as a team and you need to work as a team and be an active participant. We even want you to be proactive. If you see that there's something that you need to do, or that other processes would be easier if you helped, go and ask the secretary. Judging needs to be reasoned and independent. When you're at the frames with your team, you need to be independent from them in terms of when you're making your scores. Don't wait for them to score. Put your scores down and then you can talk about them with the team. Make sure that you're always objective and balanced, and avoid unfairness. Leave your biases at home. And when you're doing the medal levels, make sure that you consider them. Is it really a silver, or could it be a large silver? Remember, you're trying to get people to come back to the exhibition and exhibit again. So it's best to be favourable for most of the time. And you must give unqualified support to this team. If the team decides that something is going to be a vermeil, then it's best that you keep in your mind that it's going to be a vermeil, and not tell an exhibitor, well, I would have given you a gold. And remember, the jury is also a consensus. So whatever the jury decides, because sometimes what you'll find is that a team decides that it's a large silver, and you go to the notice board and the jury has decided that it might be a large silver or it might be a vermeil. And so you must have consensus about the jury's response as well. Always give positive and constructive feedback and take responsibility of completing your feedback forms. Usually you're going to be in a team of 2 or 3, so you get a broad viewpoint and experience on most subjects. We arrive at consensus in front of the frame, and we make sure that we are consistent about the way that we treat the treatment, the importance, presentation. Make sure that we speak quietly at the frame and don't discuss too much detail at the frame, but you can always go back to the jury room. And when you're at the frame, be aware that behind the frame, you often find that the exhibitor is just quietly listening. So always check who's behind the frame. If people are at a frame and they're taking time, you don't have much time. So you can ask them to come back after the jury is finished there. And of course, be aware of your physical condition. If you've got back pain, leg pain, then you must take a break. And the same with your mental condition. If you're irritable or angry, you're hardly going to give very good marks. So always take into account how you're feeling and tell your team leader that it's time for the team to have a little break. Participation while you're there. When you're at the frame, don't start by saying in your mind, oh yes, it's a large gold or it's a gold, and then work backwards on the point so that you get there. Or another method that some people do is take 10% off everything, and so it gets to about a large vermeil, and you don't have to think about the exhibition. Yes, you don't have to do much thought into the exhibit. Yes. What about now? And then what? What's that? I think he is. So you need to review your final scores and compare them with the other exhibits. Because often when you're exhibiting, what you'll find is that when you're at the frame, that you start off being a bit tougher than when you're at the end of 9 or 10 exhibits. So go back and see and compare the exhibits with similar scores to check for consistency and fairness. Of course, after judging, you need to review your exhibits, especially the ones that you're going to speak at the feedback, and identify strong points, identify areas of improvement, always note down the frame number, the page number, so that you can make specific comments on people's exhibits. Remember that you need to leave that bias away. Typically, you will find judges who are favorable for not classical material, but don't really like modern material of the 20th century and feel that it's so easy, or until you actually do a modern exhibit, you'll find that it's quite complex and often find it very difficult to find usages on covers that are single usages as opposed to multiple uses. Look for the country. Some people say, oh, it's from North Africa, therefore it must be philatelic. If that is the norm, then that's what you should take in. You shouldn't be biased against them. Beware of things like only looking for things that are inexpensive and think that it's not a challenge. That was an interruption by the phone. Some people have got a bias against rarity, saying, oh, well, all you need is money to get them. Always avoid any of these personal biases that you have. Another common one is people don't like the way things have been written up. Remember, as long as it's legible and neat, whether it's handwritten or computer-driven, every exhibit requires careful consideration and what we need to do is, when we're scoring, we can't downgrade because we don't understand what's being shown. You can always get advice from another jury member or another jury team. Make sure that you don't spend too much time worrying about the way it was written up, looking at erasures or, type errors or grammar problems. What you're there to is really to look at the material and take that into account as being the key element of every exhibit. Questionable material needs to be given the benefit of the doubt. If you think something is a fake, then you need to highlight that to the expert team, ask for the paperwork in the jury room, and then fill out the paperwork. But most of the time, it'd be best that you give them the benefit of the doubt, unless you really know that something is a fake. There isn't a right way to exhibit, and individuality should be appreciated. Some people prefer to put stamps first and then covers, while others will say, oh no, what you need to do is show a usage on each page with a stamp. What you need to do is say, is it logical? Is it following the plan? And then award the points that way. Remember, you're judging the exhibit, not the owner. The points are for the exhibit. And you're not trying to say, well, yes, I don't like this person. So make sure that you don't take those biases into account and be aware of them. Remember, it's not an ego trip. You've got a responsibility. The exhibitors paid good money to exhibit with that exhibition. So you need to empathize with the exhibitor's topic and subject, refrain from imposing your standards on it, and accept individual approaches. Only comment on the effectiveness of the approach when you're providing specific suggestions for improvement, and never denigrate the whole effort at all costs. After judging at the frame, the jury will retire to the jury room to deliberate. Usually what you'll find is the secretary will say, are we all happy that with the medal level up to large vermeil? Because it's usually printed on the notice board. There'll be computer printouts of all those awards, and you're expected to go and check them, make sure that you're happy with them, and then the jury will vote to allow them up to large vermeil. And then what will happen is you'll find that the team leaders will then go to the frames to look at the golds and the large golds to make sure that they're consistent across the classes. The jury chair often will ask for recommendations for Grand Prix and special prizes, so that while you were at the frame, you should be noting which is a very good exhibit, which one you want to nominate for a Grand Prix, and which of your exhibits require a special prize. Or note that felicitations because they've had some excellent philately in their exhibits. Remember, apprentices do not vote, but you're encouraged to actively participate in the discussion. You're there to help the jury as well. All deliberations are confidential. Remember, like I said, what's discussed in the jury should stay in the jury, not only during the exhibition, but also after the exhibition. The last thing juries want is that you get all of this correspondence after an exhibition. The results are confidential until they're posted. Remember, the special awards and Grand Prix, they're only announced at the Palmares. So again, that needs to be kept confidential. Any questions about the jury process?
So Charles, Denise from
Yeah.
New Zealand wanted to know how, if you've got a questionable item at international, we would refer it to the expert group. What do we do at national level?
At national level, we sometimes have an expert group as well, and you would refer it to them. Within your team, you might have people who know about that area themselves, and then we'll say, well, yes, there can be questionable material, but you give them the benefit of the doubt. If there are lots of questionable items, then you might want to refer that on. But one or two, you give them the benefit of the doubt. Because, you know, sometimes you're unlucky in terms of an exhibitor will say, one of three known, and then right next to their exhibit there's a full sheet of them. So sometimes it's quite obvious that some of the notations are incorrect, and it's best then to refer that on. And there's usually paperwork that you can fill out for fakes and forgeries and changes, and they're kept multiple copies. Of course, one goes to the exhibitor, one is kept by the APF.
Okay, my experience with this came about at NZ 2023 when I was the New Zealand Commissioner. There were 16 different pages that were pulled out of the frames of New Zealand entries for the Expertisation Committee. And so now I have questioned with our New Zealand jury team, how do those 16 entries or 16 items ever get to an FIAP? Should at national level there be the jurors at a national level should be picking this stuff up before it gets to an FIAP exhibition? Is that part of our responsibility as a national judge to weed it out?
It could have been noted in New Zealand. If the judges there agree with the work that was done at international, then yes, it probably was a problem in New Zealand then. But if
most of the items were questions whether they were full face queens tied to covers.
It's a common one.
Yeah, which was 1800 stuff.
Yes.
Drawings that were part of the design material that weren't signed by the.
Were they done before the material was made, or drawings afterwards?
Yeah, before. Yeah. And the person who is exhibiting it is the most knowledgeable person in New Zealand about this stuff. And so, who else could expertise his material other than himself?
So we've had a similar problem in Australia with one of our South Australian experts.
Yeah, and then
basically, all he could do was say, "Well, yes, I can give it a certificate anytime I want."
Yeah.
One of the problems with certificate, and the certificate problem is a problem within Philatelic, because often the person selling it to you is the person who's expertising it as well.
Yeah. And then the third lot of items were Pacific Island material that the covers were from very small post offices which had manuscript cancellations on them.
Yep.
And so they wanted those verified as well. So there's, I don't know where you would go to get that done either.
But even so, is it the response as national judges? If there's I don't know enough about that material myself, but if there looks to be a whole heap of material which is questionable, and the team as a whole thinks, well, we could give it the benefit of the doubt, is it our role to say, well, hang on, if you're going to take this further, perhaps you do need to get it expertised?
Well, so that's just something that is going to be discussed at our next New Zealand Judges Seminar, and I don't know if that's perhaps a topic for Australia as well.
I think what happens, we're responsible to help the exhibitor put the right material in. So if we think it's a forgery, we'll ask for some certification or some other research to prove the other. So we will ask the exhibitor to take that item out next time they're showing unless they got a certificate. If it's something that it's hard to certify, then we'll ask them to re-describe it. So maybe the description will then match the item better than what they've got. With the artist drawings that's not signed, very hard. There's a lot of new material coming out of China that you hardly can pick whether that's a real essay or a modern essay of because people can draw stamps better than anything these days. So all we can do at national level is make the exhibitor aware, and if they don't do anything about it, they can send it international. But at international, if the expert group's not happy with it, they will ask you to get a certificate, ask you to redefine it, remove the item. And if none of those are done and it's shown again, they then deduct 5 marks. And then after that, you can no. So it gets more serious at international level. So the sooner the exhibitor can get on top of it, and even if it's just taking the item out and going to the forum and saying, what do you think? What do I need to do? And get a collective opinion that this is good or not. If it's not good, the exhibitor shouldn't even persist with putting it in. But if it is and can be described well, now, if it's a fake and you want to put it in as a fake, that's totally different. But you need to describe it otherwise, you know. So, good luck with it. Please let me know how you go with the discussion at the jury's forum.
Yeah, I think actually, Glenn, I think you were actually judging these exhibits, but that was picked up by the expertisation people. Yeah, so you probably know the items I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Then the full face Queen exhibit's now been broken up and has been sold piece by piece. So now it's a brand new person. Well, several people are going to have to deal with each of these items, and we don't necessarily know where they are and what exhibits they're going to turn up in again.
Yeah. That's the good thing and bad thing about Philatelic.
Yeah.
So someone's spent 40 years putting something together and it's magnificent. Then they sell it, and then another 40 years before we see it all together again. But what we do get to see is the stages as it grows again. So I mean that's the fun of the hobby.
Yeah, but I think the Kiwi judges are beginning to realise that this forgery thing in Asia is quite a big thing, and that you really have to be sure of what you're showing if it's going into FIAP.
Yeah. And if you've got any doubt, just don't show it until you can prove otherwise. That's my recommendation always.
Well, thanks for that. Just that I just had a very big experience of it with last year with these 16 items all at once. It's ruined my Friday at the exhibition, I'm afraid. Takes a long time to take them out, sign for them, put them all back in again.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So now we're going to feedback. So written feedback in the preparation thereof. Yes, I'm talking. Judging, you make notes, comments, corrections, and suggest how an exhibit can improve. Some items simply need to be improved by the descriptions that they're given. And note areas by frame and page number, what's good, what's not so good. And in downtime, you can go through the exhibits again and plan your feedback. It's very important because probably 80% of what's going to go back to the exhibitor is your feedback sheet, rather than the exhibitor is there to listen at the frame. Make notes during the judging, and they should be adequate enough to make enough comments on your feedback form. And remember, the feedback form can't just be all negatives. You need to say positive material as well, because you'd like the exhibitor to come back again. So positive improvements. Feedback is written on a computer, so that's why we expect you to bring your computer. don't have a secretary there who can do this for you. And in Australia, we have what's called the one-up club. So it's a little box on the sheet that you tick, saying that the exhibit would be better if it's an in-depth study by a judge. Oh, what in Yes. So it's returned to the exhibitor with their exhibits. You keep a copy yourself so that when you're at the frame, you can talk to it as well. So it's an important document that you're preparing for the exhibitor. Judges need to be available at feedback. It gives people the opportunity to go into greater depth at the frame. Make sure that you get permission from the exhibitor, that you can work with other people around them, because some people prefer to have a one-on-one rather than a multiple group discussion. Two cardinal principles in philately, of course, is it's friendly and it's got a public face as well. You can't have a huge barney at the frames because you're going to be surrounded by the public. Who then become, yeah. You said you were going to look at the. I just said the internet is down.
We're still hearing you okay.
Charles is
What
breaking
about now?
up.
Yeah, I will.
Hold on. Charles, you need to unshare on yours. Sorry, guys, this is strange. Okay, I think I've got you back. Come here and take over. Yeah, it's a dropout upstairs, but you should be able to continue there. Just check that they can hear you.
So that's
I
a
think they can.
backup. I like that when a presenter has two computers,
Yeah.
so they can they can back up. Well done, Charles.
Yeah. Well, these in different rooms. Yeah.
Go away. You can't get it onto speaker view. Speaker view, otherwise you won't see your things. Speaker view. Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, go.
Okay, so we're back again. So we need positive statements about how to improve. Feedback is done on your computer, and it's the only contact that many exhibitors have with their feedback, because they don't make it to the frames. In Australia, like I said, we have the one-up club. You tick a box so that the exhibitor can send in a copy of their exhibits to a specialised judge who can then help them improve from, say, vermeil to large vermeil, or from large vermeil to gold. It's printed and then returned to the exhibitor with the exhibit. You need to keep a copy so that at the frame you can then refer to that as well. Make sure you emphasize the good points. Never say things like, well, you can't get gold with this exhibit, but tell them how they might improve. Are they going to improve by adding some archival material? or to limit the area that they're covering and provide more depth where a specific item is, and of course, broaden the scope sometimes. Some are very narrow, others are too wide. So you need to highlight these points with them. Don't focus on just the presentation alone. Often you will find that at the jury, people are always just really basically talking about presentation as opposed to substantive issues like the treatment that they have or how the plan flows. Don't try to have humour at the expense of the exhibitor and never make embarrassing comments. Don't tell the exhibitors to go to specific dealers or offer to sell the material yourselves. Saying that the only way to get that a good medal is to have a two-back. Yes, I'm looking at the little dot. And of course, always differentiate between your opinion and the objective requirements. Tell them how they can restructure their exhibits in terms of having more usages or specific usage of a single stamp. Try to be specific without trying to enforce what you think about it. When you're at the frame, congratulate the exhibitor if it's appropriate. Give them a breakdown of their points. It's probably the first time they see actual breakdown, is because on the exhibition frames, we do put the medal level, but they've got no really idea of how they receive that medal with their pointing. Mention the best aspects of the exhibit and advise how to improve it, and give concrete examples. And always focus on the exhibit, not the exhibitor. Don't say things like you're missing a lot of items, but say it'd be stronger if you included covers that had the usage. Sometimes you can be very unlucky and have a very angry exhibitor, and you need to keep calm, stick to the feedback that you had planned, explain the points, acknowledge good points, and do always suggest the ways they're going to improve it. And always be prepared to justify the jury consensus on all exhibits. Never start by saying, well, yes, it could have been a gold. Agree with what the jury have pointed out, and never indicate that you disagree with the award levels. Remember, the jury is a team and you're a team player. Are there any questions?
It's also true to say, Charles, that this is the last slide in your talk. So this is time to talk generally.
It is. So
general questions.
I think I'll start. I think that's an excellent start to this course, because you've really covered a lot of areas that's a responsibility of judges. And I think don't panic that you didn't get it all, because the more you get involved with judging, the more you're going to understand everything that Charles has gone through. One of the things Charles said earlier on is, learn about, you should go to exhibitions. I also try to, if I found an exhibit that's interesting and I know nothing about it, I try to track down the exhibitor and ask them to walk me through it. It's amazing how much knowledge you get from an exhibitor on their exhibit. So if I know nothing about George V, floors, which I don't, and if someone's happy to talk me through it, and most exhibitors will walk you through their exhibit. They're quite proud to do that. So that's a good way of learning things. And I think the buyer situation, it's so hard in the beginning. This is the way I do it. I expect you to do it that way. No, you can't. Look, whatever they do is great. You can say, this is what I do, but don't ever say I didn't like it and give the exhibitor an idea that you might have marked them down a bit. So I think all of those things are fairly important, and I think that whole coverage that Charles has done really has covered all the main points, and I appreciate him doing that. But I think if we've got a bit of time, if you've got particular questions or general questions or even about the course, please ask us now.
Glenn, I was going to ask Charles if he's got some notes. Will you be providing those notes that we saw to us? I would really appreciate.
We will send that PowerPoint presentation, which is pretty much note for, and it'll be in PDF, so you should be able to open it up on your computer quite easily. Unless Charles has got additional notes and references, we'd be happy to
additional notes for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Glenn, when a similar talk was given to the judges, he also put in a Word document.
Yeah.
And so there's a full Word document which probably could go to them as is.
Yep, perfect. Yep. All right.
Thank you.
So how about I ask a general question? This is your first session. Is everyone happy with the pace and the speed and the information that you're getting?
Oh, yes, I am.
Happy.
Yeah, I'm very happy.
Yeah,
Very
definitely.
informative.
A lot of common sense, I thought.
I think you're right, John. At the end of the day, it is common sense.
Yes.
And if you treat an exhibitor and how you want to be treated, I think you're going to do the right thing.
Yeah. There's an army expression that's instructors get given. It's firm, fair, and friendly.
Yeah.
And I think that's got everything Charles said was in that bracket.
Yeah. And I think one of the things on feedback, and I've done a lot of feedback, you have to stay in control, because the exhibitor sometimes doesn't want to hear your feedback. They just want to tell you about their exhibit. Well, you have to be fair to all the other exhibitors and say, look, I've allocated you 10 minutes. I'm going to go through the key points. This is what I like. This is how I think you can improve it. These are the things you can do. And now I need to move on, because they'll love to say, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And you're not here to teach them philately. You're here to give them feedback on their exhibits. So stay in control. That's very important, because at the end of the day, when the jury's dismissed, I do want to go to the dealer boxes and have a look. But if I'm spending all my time in front of the frames, then that's not going to happen.
That was going to be my question of how long do you spend on the feedback? I mean, is it dependent on the number of exhibits you're judging, or?
Yeah, look, I don't think there's a correct answer. Here's my rule of thumb. If it's a large gold, what more can I say? But it's fantastic. I'm not going to spend my time with those guys. If it's silver, large silver and vermeil, and they're the areas that can really improve, I will give them a bit more time. And for example, if I've given them 25 out of 35 for research and knowledge, I need to let them know how they're going to get those extra 10 points. Why? That's 2 medal levels. So I'm not going to talk about 1 point on presentation. I'm going to concentrate with those guys specifically, and no more than 3 points, because at the end of the day, they're going to go away and say, what did Glenn say? I've got to do this, I've got to do that. 3 points. That's all you need to do, and hope that they come back and they gain from that.
And also another question, when, you're giving the feedback, is it appropriate for, say, the exhibitor to, say, record on their phone if they've got a bad memory, or, is that up to the judge if they're happy to give the feedback?
I think that's a judge's call, because some people don't want to be videoed. It's, it wouldn't worry me. I prefer the exhibitor take notes down, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Another thing that you need to be aware of, the people who haven't done it before, is that you may be given feedback to not the exhibitor, but a commissioner or another person on behalf of the exhibitor.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, and that's where the written feedback's fairly important. So, there's 5 areas we judge, and then those written feedbacks, I like to see something in each of those areas, particularly if they're poor in one, that you need to note all of those. and always tell them it was a pleasure to view it, because it is. So why not tell them?
I also had an opportunity last year at a one frame interclub competition to do a feedback with somebody over the internet. Wasn't a national exhibition, but I mean, this is something that going forward, many people might, especially younger people, might expect to be able to do.
Yeah.
We've had those sort of sections at the virtual exhibitions, particularly the Canadian ones. I've had a couple of times where they've had a Zoom-based feedback session.
Yeah, also I think this is over Messenger or Facebook or something.
Yeah.
One of their friends dialed them up, and then we talk to the exhibit at the frame to the exhibitor on another island.
I think we're going to see more and more of that, Denise, and I think we've got to be prepared for it.